Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first installment of our two-part session towards accountable action on equity, allyship, and peacemaking in healthcare. We begin by turning the floor to Tecumseh, also known as Ed Connors, to offer the words before all words.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our sharing with you. So this morning I was busy trying to connect up with you and fortunately found my way to you. And I greet you all now from my territory to all of yours, and I imagine it's representing a good portion of the province. So as we begin, I'll introduce myself to you. It's, as you heard, I go by Tecumseh as well as by Ed Connors. And I'm from Ganawagi Mohawk territory. I'm Ganagahaga or Mohawk as well as of Irish ancestry. My home community is Ganawagi and where my mother was born and raised. And my father was born and raised on the town of Mount Royal of Irish ancestry. So I'm going to open our sharing today with what we refer to as the Thanksgiving address, or otherwise known as the words before all words. And I do so in order to begin to invite you to bring our minds together, in essence, as one. And as we bring our minds together, we begin to explore the possibilities of many different types of minds, many ways of thinking, sometimes referred to as worldviews. And so as I introduce you to the thinking of the worldview of my ancestors, the Ganagahaga, or coming from the Haudenosaunee Nation, also known by you perhaps as Iroquois, or the Iroquois Confederacy. So as I open with these words. These words are words that form the Thanksgiving address, but are just formed in many different ways. And but they all bring our minds together to focus on thinking about what it is that supports our lives to be long and good ones. So as we open, I open in this way. Bojo Mishomas Bojonokomas Wabano Benese Quickcrutchin Nakam Tecumseh. We're grateful for this new day. We're grateful for the brother sun who brings the light to this new day, so that we can see and appreciate the beauty of all of your creation. We're grateful for the warmth that brother sun brings to Mother Earth, so that all of creation can grow to the fullest of their potential. We're grateful for the trees and for the plants that guide us, teach us, and nurture us with their gifts. We're especially grateful to those who have given of their lives in support of our lives so that we might live. And we're grateful for the healing spirit that comes this day through the eastern doorway, that brings to us the gifts to help us to heal our physical beings so that we might live in peace this day with all of your creation. We give thanks and we're grateful, Creator, for the healing spirit that comes this day through the southern doorway. We're grateful for the waters, the medicine water that gives life to all of your creation. And we're grateful for the water beings that live within those waters. And we give thanks to those who have given of their lives in support of our lives so that we might live. And we're grateful and give thanks, Creator, for the healing spirit that comes this day through the southern doorway, that brings to us the gifts to help us to wash away the hurts and pains from our minds, so that we might live in peace this day with all of your creation. And we give thanks and we're grateful, Creator, for the healing spirit that comes through the western doorway. Grateful for Grandmother Moon, who rises in the sky and guides us in the cycles of life and death, and guides the female side of life in their special work with all of your creation. And we give thanks and we're grateful, Creator, for the healing spirit that comes at night through the western doorway, that brings to us in the form of dreams this ability to be able to see things more clearly, to hear things more clearly, to think more clearly, and to speak more clearly. And we give thanks and we're grateful, Creator, for our winged brothers and sisters who guide us, teach us, and nurture us. We're grateful for their gifts and their knowledge. We're especially grateful to those who have given of their lives in support of our lives so that we might live. And we're grateful to those who help us to wipe away the hurts and pains from our hearts so that we might live in peace this day with all of your creation. And we give thanks and we're grateful, Creator, for the healing spirit that comes through the northern doorway this day. Grateful for the four-leggeds, especially grateful for the great white spirit-bearer brother and sister who guide us, teach us, and nurture us on our spiritual healing journeys. And we give thanks for the four-leggeds who guide us, teach us, and nurture us with their gifts, and especially grateful to those who have given of their lives in support of our lives so that we might live. And we give thanks and we're grateful for the healing spirit that comes this day through the northern doorway, that brings to us the gifts to help us to endure the most difficult times of our lives, so that we might go through these times and become stronger and better human beings for them. And we're grateful for Mother Earth for her continued love and care and nurturing of our lives. Despite the disrespect and the harm we've caused her, she continues to love us, care for us, and nurture us. And by doing so, she teaches us the lessons of unconditional love. And we're grateful and we give thanks, Creator, for the healing spirits that come through your sky world. Especially grateful for the great thunder beings who bring the waters, the medicine waters, to Mother Earth, to heal her, cleanse her, and nurture her so she can continue to support our lives. And we're grateful and give thanks for the four winds that cleanse the air we breathe and bring to us the gifts of the four seasons. And we're grateful, Creator, for all those in your universe, for the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the planets, that they continue to live together in harmony and in balance. And by doing so, they teach us the lessons we need to know to live in peace with all of your creation. We give thanks and we're grateful, Creator, for your continued love and care and nurturing of Mother Earth. You continue to heal her, cleanse her, and nurture her so that she can bring us the medicines that continue and the medicine people who continue to support us on our life's journeys. And we give thanks for our elders. We're especially grateful that you continue to care for them and heal them on their latter parts of their lives, that they might live in peace for the remainder of their days. And we give thanks and we're grateful, Creator, that you continue to guide the spirits of our relatives back into the spirit world. And we're grateful for the spirit guide who guides us on our life's journey. For all these things we're grateful, and for those things that we have forgotten, we now draw to mind and give thanks for, and say, make which now all our relations. Thank you for this day. Now our minds are as one. I'll pass it back to those from your organization just to say a few words of greetings.
Thank you very much, Tecumseh, for that opening this morning. We are pleased to present these sessions today as a collaboration between the College of Audiologists and Speech-Language Pathologists of Ontario and the College of Opticians of Ontario. And we would like to begin today's session by also offering our acknowledgement that both the College of Opticians and the College of Audiologists and Speech-Language Pathologists of Ontario operate on the traditional lands of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Castlepoe and the COO acknowledge and respect that these lands are now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples who continue to experience the impact of colonization. We also acknowledge that the land where our offices are located is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. It's with the utmost respect and humility that we at Castlepoe and the COO are grateful to live and work on these lands and are committed to educating ourselves in areas of cultural safety and humility in the delivery of equitable healthcare in Ontario. Finally, we are pleased to have so many people joining us today from many different parts of the lands now known as Canada, and we encourage you to learn more about the First Peoples that inhabited and continue to inhabit these lands where you now live and work.
Thank you, Amy. A few preliminary comments before we get started. If possible, please close other running applications to improve connection on today's platform. If experiencing technical issues, exit and log back into the session. If that does not address the issue, please contact us at dei@castlepoe.com or C. Robertson at collegeofopticians.ca and we will try to assist.
So the recording of this session will be posted on both the Castlepoe and COO websites. Castlepoe registrants, you will be able to access the recording on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion eForum series page. A link will be in the chat for you. And viewing of this session can be counted toward your self-assessment tool or SAT learning goals. If you have questions for access or any issues, you can contact DEI@castlepo.com. COO registrants, you can access the recording via the page Free On-Demand Continuing Education on our website. And this session has been accredited as one professional growth hour. Certificates of completion will be emailed to those of you in attendance for the full session today. And if COO registrants have any questions about access, please contact qa@collegeofopticians.ca.
We encourage folks to remember that the following presentation is intended for educational purposes. If you have questions during the session, please enter them in the Q&A feature on your screens. We will try to answer some questions during today's session, and we'll pick up others in part 2, which is taking place on April 28th. A friendly reminder, we are here to learn, and so we ask that your questions and comments be open-minded and respectful. Last but not least, we'd like to offer a content warning. Some of the material reviewed in today's presentation may be unsettling or difficult to hear, and we strongly encourage for folks to take time for self-care when needed. You can always return to the recording of this session at a later time, and Castlepo and COO staff are available for any follow-up questions you may have.
So with those items covered, we are so excited to welcome today's speakers, Tecumseh, also known as Dr. Ed Connors, and Dr. Stephanie Nixon. So by way of brief introductions, you just met Tecumseh. He is a retired psychologist who has worked with First Nations communities across Canada. Tecumseh's recent work has involved development of Indigenous life promotion projects, including Feather Carrier Leadership for Life promotion, and a link is included in the chat. Today, his teaching incorporates traditional knowledge about healing and his experience as a psychologist. And we also have with us Dr. Stephanie Nixon. Stephanie offers leadership consulting based on the COIN model of privilege, which she developed as a way to translate core ideas about anti-oppression and anti-racism to people in positions of unearned advantage like her. She is also Vice Dean in the Faculty of Health Sciences and Director of the School of Rehabilitation Therapy at Queen's University. You can find resources created by Ed and Stephanie, including about the coin of privilege, at their website. And with that, we will now turn things over to our presenters.
Well, thank you very much. Greetings, everyone. We're so grateful that you're taking your lunch hour, probably, to spend time with us. We take your gift of time very seriously and pledge to make the most of it for you. Here's how we're thinking about doing that. We're thinking about this learning objective that has to do with mind maps. Mind maps. So we want to offer you 3 mind maps or ways of thinking for getting your heads around, getting our heads around equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-oppression, reconciliation, basically fill in the blank as it comes to social justice or trying to create a more just future. There are some fundamental ways of understanding how to do that most of us in healthcare were never taught. In fact, we were not even taught it was something to know. And instead, we're taught that there's this common sense approach that's going to get us to a more just future. And we're proposing something quite radical, which is that actually, in many cases, that's exactly backwards. So is it possible that there might be different ways of orienting our minds that allow us to understand the situation differently, our place in it, and therefore what action might look like for us that leads to more meaningful, enduring change? So it's these 3 mind maps. We're going to hit the first one today, and we're going to pick up mind map 2 and 3 when we get together again in 4 weeks from today. And we're going to just do this deep dive around what does this all have to do with each of us, with our work in healthcare, right? With Castlepo, with COO, and what does it look like for action? What does it look like for action? So let's keep connecting the dots here. Does this look familiar? As regulated health professionals, opticians have an obligation to act competently and ethically. And intent is not in question today, right? We all have the best of intent. Of course we want to act ethically. Of course we want to nurture trust and respect with integrity in our patients' interests. And this, of course, is from the Code of Ethics, right, of COO. Is it possible? Can you make space for imagining that maybe there are some ways of understanding justice that interfere with us delivering on those commitments? That our intentions are not the problem. It's our analysis of what's happening anyways that might be getting in the way of delivering on these commitments. Is that possible? And do you recognize this, these 4 principles? Every individual is unique. Practice cultural competence and cultural humility. Consider unconscious bias, and engage, like act in anti-racism, anti-discriminatory practice. Like, we all want to do this, right? We all want to do this. What might capacity building look like to help us live up to Castle Poe's guide for equitable and inclusive services? So that's what we're here to do today. And then again on April 28th, is to build a foundation, give you this beautiful, sturdy platform with which to reach those commitments even better than you may be doing now. This is not to suggest we're not doing that now. You're outstanding fields with deep dedication to this work. We're coming in to offer some mind maps that help to clarify, right? That help to drive forward good action. And so here's what it'll look like. Today, this first mind map, that coin model that was just referenced earlier, we'll spend most of our time introducing that, and that'll mostly be coming from me. Then Ed's going to pick up the baton just at the end and start to lean into our second session. When we come back on April 28th, we're going to offer an alternative to this coin model through the second mind map, a 2-row wampum belt teaching from Ed. And then we're going to come together to try and translate both of those into action using a framework that we call assimilation versus transformation. So that's what you can expect in this arc. And if you're in the room today, that's great. And we hope you're in the room with us again on the 28th. It may be that an hour is not a lot of time to do this kind of work. It may be that you do actually want to watch the recording, even if you were here, to go back over. And for folks that are joining us for the first time on the recording, welcome. We're glad you're here, and we look forward to connecting on April 28th. So here's how we're going to do it. This is going to be about scaffolded teachings. If you feel newer to these ideas, you care about them, but you haven't had a ton of training in them, then this workshop is designed for you. If you feel like you've been in this work for a while, this workshop is also designed for you. So wherever folks happen to be on that continuum, that journey, we've set up this teaching as a series of scaffolded lessons where you can pick and glean what are yours to take. And we'll do that from some sense making that you do on your own, and also some sense making that we do together. And we're not going to talk about anti-oppressive practice now so you can start it later. We're doing it while we're doing it, right? We're going to try and practice anti-oppression, or peacemaking, as Ed calls it, while we're actually trying to do the capacity building around it. So we're in it. It is praxis. There is no knowing without the doing of this work. Whew. So that's the setup. Wherever you are, we invite you to take a deep breath, settle in. Let's move into this first mind map, the coin of privilege. So for this mind map, we're going to center it around a single question. And the question is, what is my work to do? What is, for each of us, what is my work to do on, and it might be EDI, or it might be that you want to put in anti-racism, or it might be anti-colonial action in the context of reconciliation. It might be that you're particularly interested in homophobia, transphobia. You want to do good work around LGBTQ issues. Whatever the justice issue is you care about, you go ahead and put it in the quotes there. The question is, what is my work to do on that? And the frame that we're offering today is this coin metaphor. There's a number of places you can get more information about this, including this article. The link is already in the chat box. Ed and I have just started a website called Future Building, futurebuilding.global, also in the chat box. And there's a whole section in there on this coin that has that article, and also an audio version and a Q&A version. So that's where you can find more if you think that there's something to this to help move you along in your journey. And what's important to recognize right from the start is that this coin model, like if you look at that article, it turns out that it has my name on it. And so it's going to give you the impression that these are all my ideas, and they're not. This coin model is nothing more than a translation tool. These aren't my ideas. These are old ideas, mainly from Black and Indigenous thinkers, that have been gifted to people like me. I've been called to attend to these lessons for a long time, and I haven't been ready to listen. And as I started being ready to listen, I made sense of the ideas using the metaphor of a coin, but the ideas themselves aren't mine. They're core concepts in what some might call anti-oppressive practice or peacemaking. And this is just a translation exercise. So let's try it out. And the first thing we're going to do is give you a job. And it's to write yourself 3 questions. And it might be that you're going to do this on an actual piece of paper. It might be that it's in the notes section of your phone. But we want you to write down 3 questions. And the first is, what insights are landing for me? What insights are landing for me? The second is, how do I feel? This work is deeply embodied. So this is the invitation to tune in. How do I feel during this learning, and especially the unlearning, the waking up to things that we didn't even realize that we held, that we're now possibly ready to set free. So it shows up in our bodies. This isn't the time to try and explain it away or analyze it. It's just note it. Just note it. And then what are my next steps for learning in action? Learning in action. Okay. I'm catching some notes coming in through the Q&A, especially from an old friend, actually, Lori, noting that it might be that some of the links aren't making their way to you just yet. That was extremely helpful. Thank you for that feedback. If they haven't already, then they're going to be coming to you shortly. So thanks for the teamwork here, everybody. Appreciate that. Okay, so your 3 questions. I want you to jot those questions for yourself. Why? Because these are good questions for anti-oppressive practice. This is the kind of practice we want to stay in. So we're going to give you a moment right now and ask yourself, which of these am I drawn to now? Which of these 3 questions am I drawn to? And jot yourself 1 bullet. We'll give you just a few moments. Jot yourself 1 bullet. Go ahead. Thanks all. These are the gifts to yourself, right? This is what the the research tells us about adult education, right? Capture it as we go, circle around, scaffold, build. So let's scaffold on. Let's scaffold on. This coin metaphor. Usually at this point, if we don't have a chance to engage with you directly here, if we did, I'd say, how many people have heard of this before? And usually there's some in the audience who have and lots who haven't. So let's assume that folks have not heard about this metaphor before and just start from scratch. It's a really straightforward metaphor. There's only 3 parts, It's the coin, the top of the coin, and the bottom of the coin. That's all there is to this. And it's the metaphor, these 3 parts, for what I might call a coherent power analysis. A coherent power analysis. It's the whole story. As long as we can keep the whole story in view, we're in good shape. We're going to get the diagnosis of the issue right. It'll orient our action correctly. But what I'm going to propose, and this is sort of a spoiler alert because we're going to come to it in a bit, is that we're never meant to be able to hold all 3 parts of this metaphor. They're meant to slip away from us. So let's start at the beginning. First, we'll get sturdy with the metaphor. There's the coin, the top of the coin, and the bottom of the coin. In this metaphor, the coin represents systems of inequality, sometimes called systems of inequity or systems of oppression. Today, we're using all of those terms to mean the same thing. So what are these systems of oppression? Right? They're systems. They are structural. So this isn't so much about individuals. This is about what's structured into society, baked right into the social, political, economic processes, baked right into higher education, where I am, baked right into healthcare, all of our fields, right? They're so big. None of us invented these systems. None of us invented these coins, but all of us inherited them. They were created before any of us were here. And here's the thing, they are not natural. This is not just natural. This is not just human nature. These coins, these systems of oppression were human-made and can be human unmade. That's our work that we're doing here. That is peacemaking. That is anti-oppression. That is future building. So they are historic, they're structural, they were human-made, and they're unfair. They were designed very intentionally by folks that have a particular social location to deploy power over and extract resources from others. So they're deeply unfair. Whew. And the other thing is, they're bad for all of us. Even the ones they were designed to give benefit to, they're harmful for them as well. So these old systems of oppression, you would know them as the isms: colonialism, racism, ableism, cis-sexism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and on it goes, right? And they're going to matter differently in different contexts. So those are systems of inequality. We may not like them, but we can't opt out of them. They are societal. We are in society. There's no opting out of society. So that's what the coin is. And in this metaphor, the coin is the problem. It's very bad. So what's the top and what's the bottom? The top and the bottom of this coin are where each of us find ourselves. And it's not because of anything we did. It's not because of our behavior. It's not because of our merit. We find ourselves located in history, structured in history, either on the top or the bottom of each coin, depending on who we happen to be, right? So if who we happen to be, and I'm going to take the coin of racism, it's structural, right? This historic structure of racism. If you're white like me, you find yourself located on the top of that coin. I didn't ask to be white, right? I just am, but it matters because it means I find myself structured in history to be a beneficiary of racism, to get an unearned advantage, right? This is not an earned advantage. This is unfair. It's an unearned advantage. Other people don't get it. And I didn't earn it, right? And I often, when you're on the top of a coin, don't even know you're getting it. Right? Take ableism, for all of us in speech language pathology and opticians and audiologists, and me, I'm a physiotherapist by training. We need to be tuned into disability, right? But ableism, the coin, I find myself structured in history on the top of that because I'm able-bodied. And when we're on top of coins, we're not even meant to know coins exist. We're certainly not meant to expect that we're getting some kind of unearned advantage. But that's what these coins do. They give unearned advantage, all right? The bottom of the coin is the exact opposite. You get an unearned disadvantage, and it's not because of merit or behavior or worth. It's just because of who you happen to be. So I happen to be a woman. I didn't ask to be. I just happen to be a woman. It means I'm structured in history to find myself on the bottom of the coin of sexism. And that means that I get an unearned disadvantage, that there's a lot of things that are a steeper hill for me to climb than folks who are on the top of that coin. What do I call the top? You do this in your head. What do you think we call the top of this coin? Unearned advantage. We call it privilege. Yeah, we call it privilege, a position of unearned advantage. And the bottom of the coin in this metaphor, we happen to call oppression. Now, let me just take a moment. Actually, you've got your 3 questions. Is there anything landing for you now? A feeling you're having? Anything you want to jot to yourself? Please do that meta work. Keep an eye on yourself while you're doing this learning and unlearning. Jot your notes as you go. I want to take a moment to tell you what the top and bottom of the coin are not. What they're not. The bottom of the coin is not people who are victims. Like, think of that, the sexism, and the bottom is women. Women are not victims, right? Or to be fixed or saved. Like, take colonialism, which has Indigenous folks on the bottom. Indigenous folks don't need to be saved. Take ableism, disability. People with disabilities are on the bottom. Folks with disabilities don't need to be fixed, right? The folks on the bottom of the coin are not victims that need help or saving or fixing. If you think of virtually every social movement that has led to change, they've been led by folks on the bottom of the coin, right? So folks on the bottom of the coin, that means you face a steeper hill, and often worse than that, right? Violence, harm, exclusion. But it doesn't mean you're a victim. Those are the leaders. Those are the experts in how to do change making, because you see the coin so well when you're on the bottom. Folks on the top of the coin are not bad people. So at no point in this metaphor did I say the top of the coin means that you're bad, you're a bad person. Never, right? Remember the lengths I just went to in the last 5 minutes to say it's unrelated to your merit. It's unrelated to your behavior. It's just where you find yourself. So these social locations on the top and bottom of the coin, they're unlinked to our goodness. They're unlinked to our badness. It's not that. They're just where we find ourselves structured in history, right? And we need to have kindness and pride in all of our social locations. They're just who we are. The problem is the system of oppression and the behaviors of folks, top and bottom, mostly top, that are upholding these systems of oppression. That's what's bad, right? The actions that uphold these systems. And what Ed and I have found time and time again is that in healthcare, it's unwitting, it's unintended. No one intends to uphold these systems of oppression. So how is it that these inequities are so persistent? How is it that they can script people like me, who's dedicated her life to trying to do equity promoting work, and yet without having a complete analysis, I'm being tricked into acting in ways that actually reproduce the coin instead of dismantle it? How does that work? Okay. Ready to scaffold on? A little more about these coins. There are many, many different coins. Here's just a few that I'm showing on the screen. And can people be on the top of some coins and the bottom of other coins at the same time? Can you do that? And you're like, yes, of course you can do that. That's all of us. We're on the top of some, we're on the bottom of others. And it's not equal. I don't want to make it sound like, therefore, we all face the same kind of oppression. I find myself on the top of most, actually on the bottom of very few. So that combination of privilege and oppression results in different arrangements of advantage and disadvantage. What's this called? Yeah? Can you call this up? What is the concept that we're pointing at now? Yeah, I think about a third of you just landed that. Intersectionality. Intersectionality. It's this beautiful, important concept gifted to us from Black feminist scholars from way back. Combahee River Collective, on, popularized sort of the name intersectionality by Kimberly Crenshaw, advanced by Patricia Hill Collins. It's this idea that you cannot take any of these coins alone. They must be understood as intersecting to create complex arrangements of advantage and disadvantage. And this is all of us, right? Like this is you, me, this is our patients, this is our colleagues, this is our family, each of us, where we are influenced by where we find ourselves on the top or bottom of these old systems of oppression. Now, this matters for a lot of reasons, but it especially matters for us in healthcare, because where we find ourselves, these forces, whether you're on the top or the bottom, has a profound influence on our outcomes. So it vastly shapes who's healthy, who's ill, who gets injured, the kind of care people get when they walk right in the door, or if they even get to the door. These coins, where we find ourselves, remember, unlinked to behavior just by luck, where we find ourselves influences and sometimes determines who lives and who dies. So this is at the heart of what we're trying to attend to in healthcare. It's no small thing. Another way of putting this is that these coins are all about the avoidable inequities in health. Avoidable, key word. That's why we're here, right? To unmake them. So now that we have this grounding, now that we have a sense of the metaphor, the three parts, that there are many, many coins, that they intersect to create complex arrangements, that they matter dearly for health. Oh, okay, let's hold that steady, hold that firm. That's all there is, by the way, to this metaphor. And yet we're never meant to hold it. We're never meant to keep all three of those parts in our head. So I want to do an exercise. Let's try this out. I want to show you how slippery this is, how quickly, we're never meant to hold it. Someone used the metaphor the other day of holding a frog when I was working with a bunch of students. They were like, I had it. I completely had it. And then it was gone. The difference is that when that frog slips out of your hands, you know it. When this one slips away, frequently we don't even realize it until we either cue ourselves or someone else cues us with feedback. And we're like, oh, geez, do-over, get back on track, right? So we always get a do-over. Get back on track. Get back on track. So let's try this out. I want you to picture equity, right? as the sort of more thinking about outcomes, the differential outcomes, if you find yourself on the top or bottom of the coin, as across the coin. And I want you to put your mind's eye on the bottom of the coin for me. So first, just in your own head, do the 5-second reminder. What even is the bottom of the coin, right? We're not meant to remember this metaphor. So this is build that muscle of remembering this metaphor. Do it for yourself. The bottom of the coin is oppression. What does that mean? Do it in your own head. Exactly. A position of unearned disadvantage. Unearned disadvantage, not linked to behavior, right? Based on where we happen to find ourselves structured in the old history of these coins that we've inherited. We didn't invent them, but we all inherited them. So with our mind's eye on the bottom of this coin, what are the common names that we have for groups of people whose outcomes are worse because they find themselves on the bottom of the coin? They find themselves structured in history to receive that unearned disadvantage. And I'm not talking about specific coins. I'm just thinking general coins, in general terms that we have. What are some of the general terms we have for groups of people whose outcomes are worse because they find themselves structured in history on the bottom of the coin? Call up 3 in your own mind. Yeah. Some of you are saying like vulnerable populations, right? Or at-risk groups, or hard to serve, or marginalized, or priority populations, or key neighborhoods, or disadvantaged communities, and on it goes. Yeah, well done. Ready to scaffold? I want you to put your mind's eye on the top of the coin. And first do that 5-second set for me. What even is the top of the coin? It's a position of privilege. And in this metaphor, privilege means exactly a position of unearned advantage. Does it mean bad people? Am I saying white people are bad? I'm not, right? Am I saying settlers on the top of the coin of colonialism are bad? I'm not. I'm saying it's who we happen to be. It's how we happen to be structured in history. The ways we uphold the coin, now those actions are bad. We need to stop doing that. All right, top of the coin, a position of unearned advantage, just because of how we happen to find ourselves structured in history. Here's the question. Do it in your own head. I want you to come up with 3 answers, just like we did for the bottom. What are the common terms that we have for groups of people whose outcomes are unfairly better because they find themselves structured in history on the top of the coin? What are those common terms that we have that accurately describe groups of people whose outcomes are unfairly better because of the unearned advantage they receive by finding themselves on the top of the coin? If you can't think of any, then I'm with you, right? Or at least any that are accurate. Like often what we'll get is like, we just call them compliant patients. We call them normal. Woof. Yeah? Are you following this? We don't actually have a parallel vocabulary for the top of the coin, do we? Like what would it even be? Unfairly advantaged populations? Like we just don't even have words that accurately reflect the top of the coin. And therefore we don't have a way of even getting our heads around it. There's not a concept. In fact, probably the closest we could come is calling the top of the coin the lucky. The lucky. But none of this came up, right? When we're thinking about equity in our research or our education or our practice work. It's like, think back to COVID, 84% of the unfairly advantaged populations had access to the vaccine. Like it's just not even in our way of thinking. So we've got a challenge here where we don't have a vocabulary for the top of the coin. It disappears. And in fact, we are meant to misunderstand it as just normal. But it's not normal. It is an unfair advantage. You see how thinking of it as normal or neutral just disappears it. And that's what's meant to happen. We're not meant to know there's a top of the coin. No language for it, no concept for it, no discussion of it, nothing to see here. And I'll take a step further. When we're doing justice work, we don't just disappear the top of the coin. We disappear the coin itself. No more history. No more understanding those big systems of oppression. And all that's left is folks on the bottom of the coin. This metaphor has three parts: the coin, the top of the coin, and the bottom. The problem is the coin, right? And our actions that uphold it. That's a coherent power analysis. The common sense power analysis is what you're looking at on the screen right now. There's only one part, there's only one problem, and it's those marginalized populations. They need our help. There is disadvantaged communities. We need to go fix them. There's high-risk groups. We need to go save them. And do you see how dangerous this misdiagnosis is? Like, see if we can work this out. What are the implications for our efforts, right, around equity if we frame the problem exclusively as folks on the bottom? Why does that make our efforts so ineffective? Just take a moment with that, right? This is the common sense analysis that we've got that we don't even know is something that might not be right. This is what we think we're supposed to be addressing. Folks on the bottom of the coin are not a problem to be fixed. What's the problem? It's the system of oppression that's bad for all of us. So this is the misdiagnosis, and this is the whole point of today's session, is to realize that there's a misdiagnosis at play. And I keep being tricked into it. And then I catch myself and I get a do-over. I'm like, ooh, course correction. It's actually the coin. I need to understand, what does that mean? What does that look like? So misdiagnosing the problem as the bottom of the coin misses all of the focus on trying to dismantle the coin as the point. And worse, if we only frame the bottom of the coin as the problem, if there's no such thing as a coin or top of the coin, how does it allow someone like me, who finds herself on the top of most coins, how do I get to understand myself in this work? That's the big problem. I get to understand myself as neutral. Yeah? I get to, like, not part of these systems of oppression. Never mind, I'm not even in this slide deck. This is only about marginalized people. But guess what? We've inherited these structures. We're in them. We might not like it, but we cannot opt out of society. We are in it. We are complicit in these systems of oppression. We're not neutral or disconnected on the top. We're part of the system of oppression, right? And we barely know it. Ooh, we've been taught we're the experts. We're just normal, nothing to see here. That we're the ones that should be helping the bottom. Meanwhile, we barely even know there's a coin. Ooh, who's the experts here? Who needs help? It's me. So a brief moment. Which one of these questions are you being drawn to now? What insights are landing? Or how do I feel? Are you noting some feelings? I am. Or is it an idea for action coming up that you want to capture? Take a moment. What do you want to write to yourself now? Okay. I want you all to take a deep breath. If we can get our heads around this misdiagnosis issue, extraordinary things come to light. Possibilities. Let's move in that direction. I'm going to start. I'm going to offer up what some of this reframe means for our action, for our change making, for our peacemaking, for our future building. And then I'm going to pass the baton to Tecumseh to pick it up even more. Because this coin orientation is just one way of thinking about difference, right? All our wonderful diverseness that is us as humans, it does not need to be forced into this frame of there being one right one and everyone else being the other. There are alternatives. So if we can come to recognize that, it's like, ooh, what might the alternatives look like? Because they are available to us right now. Okay, so me first. This idea, like, okay, if all that's possible, then what do we actually do with it, right? Or coming back to our initial question, what's my work to do? What's my work to do? And the short answer is, it depends. It depends what side of the coin we find ourselves when we're trying to do that dismantling work, that justice work. So this, what the coin model brings to light is when all those coins where we find ourselves on top, when we find ourselves on top, that's where we want to tune in. And all of us are on top of some, right? And so those coins where we're on top, what we've been taught is our work to do, which is to save and fix and help folks on the bottom. Absolutely not. You see how that no longer holds? They do not need our help. They need us to stop upholding this coin. So if it's not helping the bottom, what is it, right? So it's a different orientation for action. It's a practice. It's going right back to the beginning, this idea of anti-oppressive practice or praxis. There's no knowing without the doing. It's the change making through our steps, through the minutia and the big stuff, working across the coin, each of us bringing our gifts to tackle the shared common issue, which is the system of oppression. It's tuning in with alarm bells to every time we fall back into what we've been taught. And the current is strong. The current is always going to send us back to your job is to save or fix or help folks on the bottom of the coin. And it's building the muscle. I recognize we're 4 or 5 metaphors in now, but it's building the muscle to recognize when, catch yourself. It's like, ooh, I'm actually trying to save that person right now. Maybe it's something else that it's mine to do. So, takeaway messages here. The before and the after, and this before is me. I spent a whole lot of my time being promoted and getting awards for doing the before, which is that I use my expertise, right? It's about me. I'm the expert. I'm here with my altruism and my energy to try and do the good work of helping the less fortunate, right? What if that's exactly backwards? Like on the surface, it sounds good. But now that we know about this coin, you're like, wait a second. No. That whole altruistic urge, that's just fueling a logic that no longer holds. So if it's not that, then what is it? What might it be? What's getting made possible for us here? Well, what if it was, I start with seeing and understanding my own role in upholding systems of oppression that create inequities, including and especially in my role in healthcare. It is baked right through healthcare, all over the place, without us even knowing it. We're being tricked into upholding these old systems when everything that we're dedicated to in our guidelines, in our code of ethics, and in our hearts, right, is to do the opposite. And what if it's, instead of I'm the expert helping the bottom, what if it's I learn from the expertise of folks on the bottom? I give credit to them, as hopefully you watch me try to do today. And especially I work in solidarity with them to help me understand how to bend towards justice in healthcare. And the biggie is, what might it mean to move away from a power over orientation to power with? And this is what Ed's going to pick up for us. Whew. So all of this is, and because often we feel like, oh my gosh, that's so much, I don't even know how I'm going to do it. You don't need to do this. This is not yours to do alone. These struggles to dismantle these coins, they have been going on for decades and centuries. They have been waiting for us to show up, and to show up in our lanes, right? Not as the experts, in our lanes, deploying our power and our safety. With accountability to change makers leading the struggles on the bottom of the coin. So that's a lot. And we invite you to sit with what were the pieces that spoke to you today. And maybe that there's some pieces that you want to push back against. That's of course welcome. The Q&A box is there. The participants don't see it, but we do. And we'll be taking into account what you let us know through that process. So a moment just back to your 3 questions. What are you drawn to? Ed, can we turn it over to you now to help bridge us to the next session and then close us well?
You can. Thank you, Stephanie. So I opened this gathering with the words before all words. And as I did so, I invited you to bring your minds together as one and possibly to introduce you to another way of thinking, as I suggested. And now we've laid out for you a mind map we refer to, again, another way of thinking and understanding more deeply by reflecting on how we are thinking. Um, that's what we've laid out as a foundation in this first mind map. As we go to mind map 2, we've basically said, what is my work to do? And then to know what my work is to do, we have to be able to understand possibilities, other possibilities, because what we actually have introduced is when we talk about the systems or that are the coin, what is it that's behind the coin and the systems that are in the coin? What produces the ways that we speak of oppressive behavior? What is it that it then leads us into behaviors that often we don't really wish to do, but we do? We oppress others in many different ways. So what is it? It's a form of thought. And as I go to mind map 2, and when you join us again, I'll share more with you. I'm holding here what's called the two-row wampum belt. This is the ways what my ancestors, many of the indigenous people of Turtle Island, or what we today call North America, we use these to create our treaties with one another and to create the ways of thinking that allowed us to live in peace with one another. And so I'll talk about this when we come together next time and show you and share with you another way of thinking that enabled us to be able to live in greater degrees of peace with one another than, in fact, what was happening in Europe when those who chose to come to this land, to Turtle Island, crossed the waters with their ways of thinking. And I'll suggest that way of thinking we sometimes today call colonial thought. We also call it Euro-Western thinking. There's many ways that we frame it, but it's the thinking that was established and developed and became the predominant way of thought that was brought across in the ships to these lands of Turtle Island, and then brought into relationship with our indigenous ancestors, my indigenous ancestors, and many of us who are indigenous to this land. And I remind you that that's what that means. Indigenous is from the land. And there are many indigenous peoples all over the world who are first peoples from the land who actually carry those forms of thought that I introduced to you in the Words Before All Words, or the Thanksgiving Address. The picture that you're seeing now on the screen was a gift that was given to me by one of my elders before he passed. I spent a number of years learning from him, and he gifted this to me before he passed, and I have it hanging on my office wall. I continue to share it out with others because I've over time come to realize how deeply this image, this picture is a metaphor for the teachings many of the teachings that he shared with me. And as we close, I'll leave this with you to reflect on as you see this child sitting upon a piece of grass beneath a tree with perhaps clouds or something below, and a globe sitting on the grass across where that child's pulling a string, a red string. And if you follow that red string, you see that that child is pulling off the divisions that we've created in our minds between each other, creating an earth that does not actually exist in this form. And any of those who go into space, those astronauts who speak to it, and we see those images now, we see there are no red lines upon the earth. But yet in our minds, we've created these lines. How has that come to be? And what is this child actually telling us? A child who actually doesn't see those lines until we teach them those lines, and then place within their minds these forms of division. So as we close, I'll invite you to put your minds together again as one and consider what it is that we have yet to learn, as we've invited all of you to do, that might bring us to a place that I think we all envision somewhere within us, and certainly within our minds, our spirits, our hearts. We vision a place of this land, of this planet of Mother Earth, that is more peaceful than in fact we have created it to be, as we as humans have impacted it. So I'll leave you with those thoughts, and we'll join together again in 4 weeks' time and pick it up from there. And we, of course, encourage you to give greater thought to what we've shared, and look at perhaps some of our resources, and to continue to reflect and think deeply about what it is we're sharing, because I do believe what we share is meant to help us all humans, to create the world that I think we do seek, one of peace, and more peaceful than in fact it is. So I give you those words to close, and look forward to when we join again. Yeah. So thanks for joining us, and I don't know, are we going to have anybody else speak from your organization to close, or is this thank you, is thank you sufficient?
No, we just wanted to thank you both, Dr. Connors and Dr. Nixon, for such an insightful and engaging conversation. I know I speak for all of us when I say that we so deeply appreciate the insights and the teachings that you have shared with us this afternoon. So thank you to both of you so much.
I thoroughly echo those thanks.
You're most welcome. Good to be with you.
You as well. And to our participants today, if you've not already done so, please do register to join us for the second part of this session happening on April 28th from noon to 1. Thank you, everyone.